center, make a taller, slightly taller project. There's some slightly different techniques you're going to use. We're going to center here as quickly as we can and open as quickly as we can. And I'm still going to cone it though. So I think that's important. If you get this here, make sure you push it back, because you don't want it to fill with water. But make sure you're still coning.
How do you cone again?
Okay, you want to lock your thumbs and push. You're pushing here. You can also think of it as pushing this way and pulling towards yourself. So you're pushing and pulling up at the same time. If you have a bigger piece of clay like this, you want to have this against that, different forces, and make sure the bottom is clean. And this way, you know, it's like you pull yourself in and it gets more and more and more centered. Okay, and then I just push back down. And that will help, and it helps wedge the clay, and it helps center it. Throwing with a sponge in your hand is probably a really good idea if you're a little more advanced. If it's a bigger piece of clay, you really have to lean into it. Okay, and then take your hands away very slowly. Otherwise it gets off center really fast. Now, there are different ways to open. And we can take some shortcuts. I'm just going to push in with my thumb here. And instead of doing these separately, I'm going to do them at once. Because in the beginning we do this in 2 or 3 movements. Let's see. As you get better, you can just do it all one piece. Because it's the same thing. This is the outside hand, this is the inside hand, but they're just connected in a different way. Does that make sense? Okay. And then I can press. I want a tiny base, interior base, because as I pull up, that's going to tend to get larger. Okay, now I'm going to slow down. And I want to start pulling up. Okay, but first I'm just going to pull up the same old way, except I'm going to make sure that my outside hand is a little above my inside hand all the time. And I'm going to compress. Okay, and I'm going to try and start moving some of this clay up really evenly. I've got the whole inside of my finger. I'm pulling against this whole side. I'm not just using my fingertip at this point because there's too much clay. Okay, when you're handling more clay, it's slightly different. Take that piece out. See, it's already got a lot wider. And then I'm going to pull up one more time. I'm just using my fingertip inside. It's, you know, the more you get used to this stuff, the more personalized you'll make your techniques. Okay. I'm going to pull one more time by chunking this out. Go ahead and pull fast, adjust your speed, do what's comfortable. And then, so now I've just got sort of a tall cylinder. But it's not really that unusual. So what's going to change, I've got an air bubble too. I'm going to have to deal with the air bubble. Air bubble, scratch it out, and then feel it, and see if you can get rid of it by just touching it. So it can be super annoying. Okay, so now what I'm going to do that's different is I'm going to start choking from the bottom and making it narrower, and this is going to make it taller, but also going to make the walls thicker. You notice it makes that weird triangular shape, because I see my fingers are touching at 1, 2, and 3 points. Okay, and then I'm going to pull again from the bottom all the way up. My hand shakes a little bit because I have a tremor. And that's just what it does, but it doesn't seem to hurt the throwing. So I'm going to choke again. So in this technique, I choke, I pull, I choke, I pull, I choke, I pull. And that helps it get taller. Otherwise, it would just get wider. Every time you pulled it up, it would get wider and wider and wider. Okay? I'm still troubled by this air bubble. Let's see if I can get rid of that. besides choking and pulling, choking and pulling, choking and pulling, is I can pull this, separately from that. So I'm going to pull the top, and then I'm going to pull the middle, but I'm going to keep gliding up. I'm just not pinching very hard anymore. And then I'm going to pull the bottom. This way, I'm going to use my knuckle, I guess. This way, I don't have a lot of heavy clay at the top and a narrow, well, I'm pulling narrow clay at the bottom, and it tends not to go all wobbly. Okay, so see, I've gotten it taller already. I tend to keep this on the bottom, a lot of clay on the bottom for stability. As you get better, you don't need to do that, but I do. Okay, so I keep choking, keeping my sponge in my hand to keep the outside moist without pouring water in the inside, because it's going to be difficult to get in there. Okay. And I guess you just repeat this process, choking and pulling, and then pulling in sections. Now the other thing is you can't get it as thin as you would get a bowl, because of this. It's just not, the bottom isn't going to hold up all that weight if it's really thin. The bowl has its kind of arch structure, so it's going to be different. Okay. One more time. Then I'm going to start shaping it, and I'm going to use this long, nice rib I have. Here. And you can use this on the outside. Kind of straighten it up if it's funny. I can curve it back in. And I can use it on the inside to give it a little more shape. So it's kind of a vase shape. Make sure you get it a little bit wet first. I can do a down pull, up pull, but sometimes shapes are good by doing a down pull. And then up pull, okay? And then you shape it however you want it. Well, these don't have to be really gigantic. The idea is just to get them tall and tall in their wide. And the way to get them taller than their wide is choke and pull, choke and pull, choke and pull, and then pull in sections. This is uneven. Trim that. It's kind of grossly uneven. Fix that. Oh, I guess that's how it's going to work. Okay, so now at the very end then you're going to cut all this off. And I've liked it for stability. If you can, pull a little more up, more power to you. Otherwise, we'll just cut it off. Think about what that final shape should be before you cut it. Because once you cut this off, you're done shaping. But right now, it's just providing stability. Okay. So here we go. Cut it. A lot of clay, but again, we liked it there because it helped us keep it. These are hard to foot because they're so tall, so you want to do a lot of trimming right now. Don't wait to say, oh, I'll put that off, because that'll be hard to do. Okay. And then just about done. The only thing I would do now is make that little extra cut, trim it maybe a little bit like this, and you're pretty much good to go. If you have a nice flat base, you won't need to flip it. Okay? Yay! Awesome. Then you got that.